Heavy explosions have been reported across Tehran as the Israeli military continues to bombard the Iranian capital. The Israeli military says it is targeting the infrastructure of the regime without specifying what. Reports from Iran say the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps spokesman Ali Mohammed Naini was killed in one of the attacks. The Israeli military also said it struck targets in southern Syria overnight in response to attacks against the Druze population in the city of Suwaida. The targets, a command centre and weapons in military compounds belonging to the Syrian government. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu says Israel will hold off on attacks on Iranian gas fields after being asked to by US President Donald Trump. Elsewhere, the United Arab Emirates, Kuwait, Saudi Arabia and Bahrain all reported missile or drone attacks. A drone attack at a Kuwaiti oil refinery has caused a fire, according to state media. Sirens also sounded in Jerusalem. Large booms were heard in the sky with Israel's Iron Dome missile defence system kicking into action. The latest night of attacks came after Israel's Prime Minister claimed the Iranian regime is weaker than it's ever been and can no longer enrich uranium or make ballistic missiles. In his second televised address since launching the war against Iran, Benjamin Netanyahu said ground forces would be required in Iran in order to change the regime. He also said Israel will hold off attacks on Iranian gas fields after being asked to by US President Donald Trump. He also insisted that Israel did not drag the US into the conflict.
Does anyone really think that someone can tell President Trump what to do? Come on. I don't think any two leaders have been as coordinated as President Trump and I. He's the leader. I'm, his ally. Fact number one, Israel acted alone against the Slawia gas compound. Fact number two, President Trump asked us to hold off on future attacks, and we're holding out.
Our Middle East correspondent Ilan Nell told me more about the Israeli Prime Minister's comments from Jerusalem.
There was a short statement from the Israeli military that came out in the middle of the night saying it was carrying out a new wave of strikes targeting what it called regime infrastructure in Tehran without giving any more details about that. This came after there were these rounds of missiles that were fired towards Israel overnight in quick succession, actually, 5 rounds in the space of about an hour and a half. 4 times around midnight, sirens went off in Jerusalem and the thuds of interceptions were heard overhead. That has actually continued this morning as well. We've had a couple more rounds of missiles fired towards Israel with no reports of any casualties, but it does seem to be a message coming from Iran that it still does have this capability after the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu in that news conference was talking about how Iran had been decimated by the war, how the US and Israel were winning the war. He said that Iran no longer had the ability to enrich uranium and that Israel was continuing to destroy its nuclear facilities. He said that Iran no longer had the ability to manufacture ballistic missiles either.
Yolande, we heard there from the Prime Minister that he insists that the US, that Israel, did not drag the US into war. There's been lots of confusing messages about exactly who's in control, who's calling the shots, but Mr. Netanyahu being pretty defiant there.
Yes, and that really, came to a head again this week when Israel attacked the South Pars gas field, this vast gas field in Iran, other gas facilities, and then that drew this furious response from Iran attacking the energy infrastructure of its Gulf Arab neighbours. Now, it was said very quickly in the Israeli media and other reports as well that there was close coordination between Israel and the US when it came to that strike. They said these two partners are working so closely that had to be the case, and that was briefings that they had particularly in the Israeli media. But then the Israeli Prime Minister came out saying, in line with what President Trump had claimed, that Israel had acted alone in striking the South Pars gas field. He said that he had pledged to President Trump to hold off on such attacks in the future. Now, that did have some effect in steadying the energy markets because, that had really led to a surge in oil prices and gas prices in the past couple of days. Also, other comments that came out, the US announcing that it would increase oil production, and there was also that joint statement that came from the UK and other European countries, Japan and Canada, late yesterday, where they were saying that they would assist in appropriate efforts to help shipping through the Strait of Hormuz.
A number of Gulf countries are again coming under attack from drones and missiles fired by Iran, with reports of strikes in the UAE, Kuwait, Saudi Arabia and Bahrain overnight, including another strike on Kuwait's Mina Al Amadi oil refinery. Our correspondent Asneh Bashiri is in Dubai following developments across the Gulf nations and had more on the strikes on a Kuwaiti oil refinery.
It's a day after countries in the Gulf and a group of Arab nations and Islamic nations urged Iran to halt its attacks and to halt them on energy infrastructure in particular as well. And then news came this morning from the state oil firm KPC in Kuwait that an oil refinery had been hit by multiple drones, that emergency crews battled a fire there but had to shut down multiple units as a precaution. And this was already a scenario that these countries in the region had desperately wanted to avoid, their energy sector being brought into this war. Remember, their economies are built around that energy sector. And then on top of it, in Qatar, they're still assessing the damage, severe damage at the Ras Laffan energy field. That they have an LNG field that has been, right now, they've assessed its export capacity for Qatar is down 17%, that it will cost $20 billion annually, and that capacity is estimated to be down for the next 5 years. And so all of this is still happening as the region is celebrating Eid, the end of the holy month of Ramadan, and as in Iran and for Iranians around the world, they celebrate Nowruz, Persian New Year, but of course a very big shadow has been cast over those celebrations.
Our security correspondent is Frank Gardner, and he told us more about Saudi Arabia's warning from its foreign minister towards Iran.
Well, he's dangling the threat there, I think, hoping to put the Iranians off carrying out any more missile strikes on Saudi Arabia's key critical national infrastructure, things like Ras Tanur, its export terminal, similar thing up at Jubail, at Yanbu and at Samref. These are all part of the kind of beating heart of the Saudi economy. Similar installations in Kuwait and, of course, here in Qatar. Iran probably isn't taking much notice of that. The Iranians will know that if the Saudis were to enter this war, I mean, it would have a negligible impact compared to the might of the US military, but it carries two big risks for the Saudis. One is that the Iranians will intensify their bombardment of Saudi installations, possibly even extending their target set to hit more civilian targets. They're already hitting some. But also there is the domestic risk, because if Saudi Arabia enters this war on the side of the US and Israel, it is effectively being seen by its population as taking sides with Israel against a Muslim country. That's dangerous. Yeah. So I think they'll think very carefully before doing that.
Is Saudi Arabia even capable? What is Saudi's military might?
They've got a very powerful air force. They've spent billions and billions of dollars on buying state-of-the-art F-15s and other aircraft from the United States. They've tried to diversify away from just the US in recent times. The Saudi military has not performed particularly well in Yemen. They fought a long, nearly 10-year-long war there. They did a lot of bombing. Their targeting was dreadful. They hit weddings and funerals and schools and hospitals. I mean, it was dreadful. There were a lot of civilian casualties from those Saudi bombings. And on the ground, their army didn't really perform particularly well. So they've had a very bloody experience in Yemen, in which the Houthis essentially repelled the Saudis. So Saudi Arabia entered that war in 2015, hoping to achieve a quick victory by the end of the year. It dragged on for years, and the Houthis were able, as I say, to repel them. So the Air Force, yes, quite strong. They train hard. They've got some good kit. They've had good instructors. They've practiced. But in terms of land forces, not much.
And Frank, before I let you go, obviously today is really significant for people across the region who are gathering for Eid. In Iran, you have the Persian New Year, Nowruz. What is it like there? Are people wanting to celebrate, or is it tense? Just give us a sense of the mood.
Well, I'm going to be honest with you, we're a little bit constrained here. The Qataris, the government here has confined us to one location. They're not keen on us filming anywhere outside that. We're very constrained. The security is much tighter here. I mean, just to give you an example, where we're staying has got some lovely grounds. We're not allowed near it. You know, a guy stops you on the door, you can't walk, you know, it's very constrained. So I'm not going to pretend that I've got out and mixed and mingled with lots of people in the souk. It hasn't happened. But reading op-eds and talking to some people, there is a kind of, you know, people do the kind of shrug, a kind of, God willing, this will be over soon. You know, people are hoping for the best, but also fearing as to how much longer this is going to go on. I mean, yesterday we all attended a press conference, a joint press conference in the Emiri Diwan, that's the royal court, by the Prime Minister, who's also doubles as the Foreign Minister, and alongside me had his Turkish counterpart. And they are clearly very rattled by this attack on their economy. Things could still get worse.
Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu says Israel will hold off attacks on Iranian gas fields after being told to by US President Donald Trump. Our Asia business correspondent Nick Marsh says those words have made a slight difference to the markets.
Compared to yesterday's incredible surge in energy prices, with both oil and gas going up a huge amount after those, attacks on the infrastructure that you've just been hearing about, things are reasonably stable. I mean, you had Benjamin Netanyahu basically talking about the war being over quicker than people think. Donald Trump as well assuring, I suppose, markets. It's hard to know who he was talking to, but saying that Israel wouldn't attack Iran's gas fields again, and both sides basically saying that they'd hold off on further attacks. So those words did move the markets to some degree, but the actual facts on the ground mean that energy prices are still incredibly high. I mean, you were just hearing there about the attacks on so many Gulf countries which have continued, the extensive damage to the Ras Laffan liquefied natural gas facility, $20 billion worth of Qatar's revenue being hit annually. Almost a fifth of its output is thought to be compromised. It's going to take 3 to 5 years, the energy minister says, to fully repair that plant. So we're not only talking about a situation where the Strait of Hormuz is blocked, and it is still blocked in spite of what many countries are saying about how they're going to try and get traffic through there. It still is blocked at the moment, more or less. Iran is in control. You're getting these really, really important energy infrastructures, whether it's oil or gas, in lots of different countries being hit. The one in Qatar hit particularly severely, and that's why the prices of oil and gas are still very, very high. They're stable, but they're still very, very high today.
And you mentioned there, Nick, that Qatar has said that even if the war ends, it will take many years to repair damage. I mean, what is the impact of all of this? As you were saying, commodity prices have been on a roller coaster.
Yeah, I mean, if we're talking years of repairs, that means that the energy markets are going to have to brace themselves for some pretty severe disruption. I mean, that's the fear. You look at Europe, for example, it took quite a long time to wean itself off Russian imported gas. After Russia invaded Ukraine about 4 years ago, it was looking to places like the Middle East, like Qatar. Qatar is one of the, if not the leading player in the liquefied natural gas market. Now they might be thinking otherwise. So you're going to have to look at some other kind of market. And as soon as markets start shrinking, that means that prices start going up. If you're India or you're China, you're Japan or South Korea, massive customers of Qatari gas, you're also worried as well. Are we going to be able to get the same supply? Are we going to be able to get it at the same prices? Same goes for oil. If you're a country like the Philippines or Indonesia, they've started talking to Russia now to try and get Russian oil, which is now unsanctioned for about 30 days. That means that the price of that is also going to go up, and that's going to clearly benefit Russia too. There's even been talk, and this is from the US Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent, that America might unsanction Iranian oil to try and increase flows. Now, that would be quite something. It might do something to stabilize the price of oil by increasing supplies, but it's ultimately the lifeline that the Iranian government is relying on financially, which again, it might prolong the war in a way. So, you know, markets, people all around the world just looking for when this is going to end, and it doesn't really show any signs of ending anytime soon.
Around the world and across the UK, this is BBC News.